It's 11 p.m. You've already survived the day. Your brain feels like it's been wrung out like a towel. You finally sit down, maybe the first moment of quiet you've had in hours. Your shoulders drop, your eyes get heavy, and then your phone lights up. It's that name. The one that never texts you just to say hi. The one that doesn't ask how you are. The one who only appears when their world is on fire. You stare at the screen, and for half a second, you feel it. Your body bracing. That little spike in your chest, not because you don't care, but because you already know what's coming. A breakup, a panic spiral, a fight with their boss, another crisis, again. And before you even check in with yourself, before you even notice how exhausted you are, you pick up, you listen, you soothe, you analyze, you search for the perfect words that will stabilize them. You absorb their chaos so they can finally breathe. 2 hours later, they're calmer. Their nervous system has borrowed yours. They sigh in relief and say something like, "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. Honestly, you're cheaper than a therapist." They laugh, and then they go to sleep. But you're wide awake. Your body feels heavy, your mind is racing, and there's this quiet, ugly feeling underneath it all. Something nobody talks about. Resentment. Because you didn't choose this moment. You didn't offer your energy. You didn't consent to being an emotional emergency room at midnight. You just couldn't stop yourself. And that's the trap. Because this isn't just kindness. It's conditioning. Somewhere in your life, you learned that love is something you earn. By being useful, by being needed, by being the one who holds everything together. So tonight we're going to talk about why this happens and how to resign from this role without becoming a cold person and without losing the people who actually love you. Here's the part most people don't want to hear. You're not just attracting emotionally draining people. You're training them, not on purpose, not because you're weak, but because every relationship has an invisible contract, rules that get written silently through repetition. And your contract usually sounds like this. You can come to me anytime. I will always answer. My needs can wait. Your emotions matter more than mine. You didn't sign that contract with a pen. You signed it with behavior. Every time you replied in 60 seconds. Every time you stayed on the phone while your body begged for rest. Every time you said, "It's okay, I'm here," while secretly hoping they'd notice you were drowning too. That's how people learn what you tolerate. And slowly, you stop being a friend. You become a service, an emotional support line with no office hours. And here's the most dangerous part. The better you are at this role, the more permanent it becomes. Because you don't just listen, you perform competence. You ask the perfect questions. You make sense of their chaos. You hold their hand through the spiral. To them, you feel like safety. So their brain associates you with relief, not connection. Which is why they don't text you when they're happy. They text you when they're collapsing. This is what I mean by the hidden contract. You're not being punished. You're being used in the exact way you trained people to use you. But the moment you see the contract, you can rewrite it. And that's where your freedom begins. Now let's make this real, because there's a difference between being a supportive friend and being an unpaid therapist who's slowly disappearing inside other people's emotions. So I want you to do a quick self-assessment with me. No judgment, just honesty. If you relate to 5 or more of these, you're not just empathetic. You're probably trapped in the therapist friend role. 1. People call you during emergencies but rarely check on you when life is calm. 2. After certain conversations, you feel heavy, like your chest is carrying bricks. 3. You give the same advice over and over, and they ignore it, then come back anyway. 4. Your stomach drops when you see their name pop up on your phone. 5. You feel guilty setting limits, even when you're exhausted. 6. You're great at supporting others, but you don't know how to ask for support yourself. 7. You end calls feeling used, hijacked, or weirdly violated. 8. You play emotional detective, analysing their trauma like it's your responsibility to solve. 9. Your moods get affected for hours after talking to them. 10. You've ever thought, if I stop being useful, will anyone still want me? Now here's what matters most. Your body knows the truth before your brain does. If your nervous system tenses every time they reach out, if you feel resentment bubbling under your kindness, that's not you being a bad person. That's your system trying to protect you. Because love isn't supposed to feel like an unpaid shift. And once you can name what's happening, you can start changing it. Not by becoming colder, but by becoming free. Have you ever noticed how your body reacts before you even say a word? Someone starts crying, and your throat tightens. They panic, and your heart starts racing. They're spiraling, and suddenly you feel like you can't breathe. That's not you being dramatic. That's your nervous system doing exactly what it was wired to do. You likely have high empathy, maybe even high sensitivity. Your brain is constantly scanning microsignals, tone shifts, facial tension, tiny pauses in speech. And when you detect distress, your mirror system lights up like an alarm. In other words, you don't just witness emotions, you absorb them. But here's the crucial distinction most therapist friends never learn. Empathy is not responsibility. Empathy says, I see you, I feel with you. Responsibility says, I have to fix this or it's my fault. And that second one, that's where you start losing yourself. Because the moment you believe it's your job to regulate someone else's emotions, you become their nervous system. You become the oxygen mask they refuse to wear on their own. So you over-explain, you over-comfort, you over-function, and it feels loving until it becomes suffocating. Real empathy has boundaries. It can hold space without absorbing the whole storm. Here's a line I want you to remember. You can care deeply without carrying it. You can be present without becoming responsible. You can love someone without merging with their pain. And the moment you separate empathy from emotional responsibility, your body finally stops acting like every crisis is yours to solve. Let's go a layer deeper, because this isn't only about other people taking too much. It's also about the part of you that secretly feels safest when you're needed. This is what I call the fixer identity. When someone is falling apart and you step in, when you calm them down, make sense of their chaos, give the perfect advice, something happens inside you. You feel valuable. You feel powerful in a quiet way. You feel like you have a role. And that feeling can become addictive. Because for many therapist friends, self-worth isn't tied to who you are. It's tied to what you can do for others. So the moment you're not helping, the moment you're not solving, the moment you're just existing, a deeper fear surfaces. If I'm not useful, am I still lovable? That fear makes you overfunction. You don't just listen, you research. You don't just support, you strategize. You don't just comfort, you carry the whole relationship on your back. And here's the twist. Sometimes fixing others becomes a way to avoid yourself. Because as long as someone else has a crisis, you don't have to face your own emptiness, loneliness, or unresolved pain. So yes, some people drain you, but your fixer identity also keeps the door open. And healing begins when you choose a new identity. Not the savior, not the therapist, just a person who deserves love even when they're not needed. To understand why this pattern feels so automatic, we have to go back. Because the therapist friend is rarely born. They're made. Psychologists have a word for it: parentification. It happens when the roles between parent and child get reversed, when the child becomes the emotional container for the parent. Maybe your mum was anxious or depressed. Maybe your dad had a temper. Maybe there was addiction, instability, or just emotional immaturity in the home. And as a kid, you learned something very early. Your safety depended on their mood. If mum was okay, the air felt breathable. If she wasn't, the whole house felt dangerous. So you became hyper-aware. You learned to read the room the way some kids learn math. You noticed footsteps, door sounds, silence. You could tell whether it was safe to speak just by the way someone set a cup on the table. And in that environment, you developed a survival strategy. You became the regulator. You didn't ask, "What do I need?" You asked, "What do they need?" So everything stays calm. You learned to swallow disappointment, to downplay your emotions, to be easy, to become low maintenance so no one would explode. This is often connected to the fawn response, the fourth trauma response after fight, flight, and freeze. Fawning is not weakness. It's a brilliant nervous system strategy, people-pleasing to stay safe. You learned that connection wasn't something you received freely. Connection was something you earned by being helpful, agreeable, emotionally available. So now as an adult, you recreate the only version of love you understand. You attach to people who need saving. And every time you fix them, your body whispers, "See, you're safe, you're valuable, you belong." But that's the tragedy, because you were never meant to be anyone's emotional parent. You were meant to be a child, with needs, with feelings, with protection. And healing begins the moment you realize you don't have to earn love by holding everything together. Here's what no one tells the therapist friend. The bill always comes due. At first you can handle it. You even feel proud, like you're the strong one, the stable one, the one people can rely on. But over time, something starts to change. You begin to feel numb, not because you stopped caring, but because your system is overloaded. This is compassion fatigue, a burnout state usually associated with nurses, therapists, first responders, except you're suffering from it too. You might catch yourself zoning out while someone talks, or feeling irritated the moment you hear, "Can I tell you something?" Or thinking, "Here we go again," and hating yourself for it. And then there's the physical cost, because your body keeps score. Every trauma dump conversation spikes your stress hormones. Cortisol goes up. Your nervous system stays on alert long after the call ends. That's why you can't sleep. That's why your chest feels tight. That's why you get headaches, stomach issues. This constant heaviness you can't explain. You're not just listening, you're carrying secondary trauma. But the most dangerous cost is quieter. It's resentment. Resentment is what happens when your kindness becomes unpaid labor. It builds slowly, one unreturned "How are you?" at a time, one ignored piece of advice, one crisis that somehow becomes your responsibility, until eventually you dread their name on your screen. And here's the hard truth: resentment isn't proof you're a bad friend. It's proof you've been abandoning yourself for too long. Because love shouldn't feel like an emotional overtime shift. And if it does, something has to change. Not all emotional sharing is bad. Friendship needs vulnerability. People should be able to lean on each other. But if you're the therapist friend, you have to learn a critical distinction. Because it's the difference between healthy intimacy and emotional exploitation. Venting is healthy, it's time limited, it's about a specific situation. And the person venting still remembers you're a human being in the room. They might say, "Thank you for listening," or "I'm sorry, I just needed a moment." Venting releases pressure. Trauma dumping is different. It's intense, unfiltered emotional flooding, often unsolicited. The person isn't sharing to connect, they're sharing to regulate. They're using your nervous system because they don't know how to calm their own. So how do you tell the difference? Look for these signs of dumping. The conversation loops for hours with no movement. Every suggestion gets dismissed. "Yeah, but..." There's no reciprocity. They never ask about your life. You walk away feeling hijacked, violated, or emotionally contaminated. Now here's the upgrade most people miss. Healthy sharing requires 3 C's: consent, capacity, reciprocity. Consent means you agree to hold something heavy. Capacity means you actually have the energy to hold it today. Reciprocity means the relationship flows both ways. Here's the single sentence that can change your life. Do you have the capacity for something heavy right now? If someone can't respect that question, they're not looking for connection. They're looking for a container. And you're allowed to say, I care about you, but I can't be that container anymore. If you want to save your mental health and keep real friendships, you don't need to become colder. You need a system. Because boundaries aren't walls. Boundaries are gates. They decide what gets access to you and when. So let me give you a blueprint you can actually use. First, create your boundary map. 4 categories. 1. Time. What hours are off limits? Example, no crisis calls after 10 p.m. 2. Channel. What can be text versus call? Heavy topics, scheduled call, not random texts. 3. Topic. What subjects require consent? Trauma, self-harm talk, extreme spirals. 4. Duration. How long can you hold space? 15 to 30 minutes max. Now, the boundary ladder, because you don't jump straight to cutting people off. You climb in steps. Step 1, delay. Don't answer instantly. Script. I saw this, can't talk right now, but I can check in tomorrow. Step 2, limit time. Script. I have 15 minutes. Tell me what's going on. Step 3, redirect. Script. I care about you, but I'm not equipped for this level. Do you have someone else you can reach out to? Step 4, require consent. Script. Before you go into it, are you venting or wanting solutions? And do you need a yes from me to hold something heavy? Step 5, require reciprocity. Script. I want this friendship to feel balanced. I can't be the only support line. Step 6, distance. If they guilt trip you, punish you, or disrespect limits, your body is giving you data. And one more script. This one is for midnight emergencies. I love you. I'm not abandoning you, but I'm drained and I can't do this right now. Let's talk tomorrow. If it's urgent, please call a professional or crisis line. That is not cruelty. That is self-respect, because your availability is not proof of love. And unlimited access is not friendship. It's a job. When you finally stop playing therapist, a strange thing happens. At first, you'll feel guilty, like you're doing something wrong. Your nervous system will panic, because it was trained to believe, if I'm not useful, I'll be abandoned. But then reality shows you the truth. Some people will respect your boundaries. They'll adjust, they'll grow. Those are your real friends. Some will try to negotiate, guilt trip you, get passive aggressive, say things like, wow, you've changed. That's not feedback, that's manipulation. And some will disappear completely. And painful as that is, it's also clarity. Because what you lost wasn't a friendship. It was a position, a role, a job you never applied for. So here's your new rule. You can love people without being their nervous system. You can support without self-abandonment. If this hit home for you, I want to hear it. Leave a comment. What role have you been stuck in? The fixer, the listener, the strong one? And if you want more videos like this, psychology that actually changes your life, subscribe to the channel. Next, we're doing a deep dive on the fawn response and how to stop people-pleasing from the inside out. Protect your peace. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.